She's just a girl, but she's on fire.
Hi, Ali Alvarez here, and today I'm going to talk about something that a lot of my subscribers have been asking about. And I'm actually going to talk about stocks and investing, which is another piece of the cash flow Robert Kiyosaki quadrant, and is sort of where my journey began in stepping into working to create wealth and financial freedom in my own life. And that has been a very, stepping in and learning how to invest for myself in the stock market has been absolutely profound in my life. And as coming from a yoga teacher background, it was sort of like a square peg in a round hole. I'm not an analyst. I don't do analysis. But I'm going to kind of show you, I'm not going to tell you stocks to invest in today, which is something I could do, but I'm not going to. That's not what this is about. I'm actually going to tell you a little bit about the story of my journey into the investment world and share with you how it's profoundly affected my life on a financial level and given me a level of freedom that I would not have. So this is really a big one, and it's ultimately a little bit more about mindset and how you're thinking and a little bit of tools and tricks and trades of sort, like I'm going to point you in a direction, because if you're already an investor, this is not a video for you, because I'm not going to probably teach you anything new. But if you've always looked at the stock market as this thing that's really far away from you, that's something that's impossible to do, I'm going to tell you that it's not. It's much easier than you think. But it is about, you have to watch your pot. And you have to, I think a better way of looking at it or speaking on it is, you have to drive your own car. So I'll kind of start where the seed for me was planted was as I was hustling around New York City as a private yoga instructor, and I would go from one person's house to the next, and it was definitely a luxury business and a luxury world. I'm walking into Park Avenue homes, and I'm stepping into homes of people that were in the financial world a lot, that would have MSN money running in the background while we would be exercising or doing yoga or talking about what we needed to talk about in our session. And there was one particular day where I had a client that I was working with, and she was a Wall Street, I'm not sure specifically what she did, but she traded and she worked on Wall Street, and she always had MSNBC money running while she was doing her bike and all of that. And I kind of had this thought as I looked at this woman, and I thought about myself and the world, and I had that seed question opened up my mind, where I asked the question of myself, how do I do that? How do I take this world of the stock market and make it work for me? And not so that it's something that is so foreign and something that somebody else does for somebody else to make money, but how do I allow it to serve my life in a great way? So that was really the beginning, and I sort of tossed that question around for a little while. And as I might have mentioned in other videos, the first awakening for me was really the Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad Poor Dad book, where he was talking about investing. And I'll show you the cash flow quadrant again, where we're looking at the four aspects of the quadrant: the employee, self-employed, investor, and business owner. And where he really talked about that investor and that business owner being the side of the quadrant that you really want to have a playground in. You want to step into that world more. And because if you're not, your life is going to be a lot harder to build wealth, because of the way the taxes are structured on the employee and the self-employment side. And because of taxes and inflation, essentially, in a nutshell, it is a lot harder to dig out financially or to create a financial foundation. And I got really into the idea of, how do I create a bigger platform for myself so that I can do things like study with art teachers and and, go on ski vacations and, things that, I guess as you sort of sit in the witness of what some people are able to do in their life. And I think there's a part of all of us that wants to create a life that is more expansive. I mean, that's kind of what humans are here for, right? We're here to come down as little souls and expand our world, expand the world at large. And it's part of growing. And if we're not growing, we're dying, right? So this was a piece of that growth for me, is how do I grow this part of my world and not ignore it, not shove it under the mattress and hope that someday I'll win the lottery, or hope that someday I'll get some inheritance, or that something's going to change. It was a proactive step for me creating that change. And so, essentially after, digging around the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, I had mentioned in another video that I plunked down $200 and I bought the game. And I began to find a community of other people in New York City that were also playing the game and interested in learning about real estate and interested in learning about investing. And I stumbled upon an amazing teacher, a guy from Guyana, and he had several properties in Brooklyn, New York. He had 4 properties. And he was this very, I'd say, brilliant teacher in my mind. We would sit down, and I kind of talked about this and alluded to this in another video. I called it Starbucks University. We would pay him a little bit of money, like $10-$20 each. And there was a group of probably like 10 of us. And we would sit down with him, and he would go on for 3 hours. And we would talk about economic indicators. We would look at the real estate. We would look at Shiller's, his graphs and his charts. And, it was always different. It was every Thursday night we would meet up, and we would just sit until Starbucks kicked us out. And we were always talking, and it was really kind of like a foundational education for me of the financial world. And it was so different from the yoga world, but I loved it. And he was a teacher that inspired me to learn. And I knew that I was never going to be a numbers cruncher. I knew that I wasn't cut from that cloth. I'm much more of an artistic type. So I was like, I kind of had a little bit of a wall there with the numbers crunching, but I knew there was a way to do this. And the seed was planted enough in me of just being in the presence of these other people that were very, I guess it's left brain. And here I am very right brained. So I was surrounded by a lot of people that had that mindset that, they adopted it much easier than me. But nevertheless, I would show up, and, it's like, this is sort of my college after college. And I did that for about 2 or 3 years straight, working with this group of people. And I dabbled in a few small real estate. I dabbled in a real estate investment with a group of other people. And it was all about learning. And when you step into action is when the learning starts to come alive. You can read about things in a book, but it's when you're actually in the physical doing that your mind opens up that field of vision and allows you to see in a much deeper way, because you're invested, possibly financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically. You've got your sleeves rolled up. So I ended up getting pregnant and moving north of the city. And so my classes continued at Starbucks University, but I kind of dropped out, became a dropout again. But that's okay, because what happened was I decided to stand on my own 2 feet, and I opened up an online trading account. And I was like, all right, I've got some savings. I'm going to put my education into action. And so over the course of several years, I created habits. And I'm going to tell you that this is kind of like a really great place to start. And this was really, really helpful to me, is that I had a morning habit of, for breakfast, while I was at breakfast, I would have my computer out, and I would, my home page to my computer was MSM Money. So I could always just check out what's happening in the market, what businesses are people talking about, and start to get a feel for the language of that business. And it's a different language. And if it's not something that you're exposed to, your mind is going to tune it out and shut it out. So that was kind of a big piece, was it was the sort of this compounding education of every day showing up and spending 15, 20 minutes reading from different financial writers. I found a few financial writers that I really liked, like Jim Juback was one of them. And it was like looking at different points of view of how people talked about business and why they liked certain stocks. And it had nothing to do with numbers, but everything to do about what is this business? How does this business fit into our world at large, and what is its purpose? And is it well managed? Is it, so I didn't have to do analysis work. I didn't have to crunch numbers. I was surrounding myself with financial writers and educating myself more from the perspective of the story of the business and not necessarily the numbers. I mean, I could go back now and look, now as I've spent more time in the business, I can look at the numbers a little bit more and like read the story of the numbers a little bit better. It's still not like a great thing for me. It's more about the idea of what is this business in the world. And one of the books I read that kind of taught me that way of thinking was Peter Lynch's Beating the Street. It's a tiny little book. And, there's a chapter in that book where he talks about eighth graders, and this teacher who she was working with she wasn't a stock investor, but she was like, and I was sort of like, I kind of allude myself to the same thing. It's sort of like I'm a school teacher investor, where this woman was teaching her eighth graders about the stock market and about investing, and that they created these portfolios that actually beat the S&P. And it's like, and so Peter Lynch's point in this book was that if an eighth grader can do it just by using logic, then, people can step in and get the market to work for them. Now, it doesn't mean the market doesn't go down. It doesn't mean that you can invest something and it will never lose. And not everybody who, you're not going to gain on everything you put into the market. But if you do lose money on a certain stock, can you learn the lesson of why? And that is part of your education going forward. And in the beginning, I've now been an investor. I've hit my 10-year mark as a personal investor, because actually the first thing I did, even before my Starbucks education, was I started working with a broker. And that actually left me broke. I was considered a very small account holding, because I was like less than, I think $10,000 or less than $100,000. So they ate me alive with fees. And every trade that was made was like, $30 or $40. It was ridiculous. And he didn't, and I'm thinking that, if I have a broker, they're just going to make money for me. No. Doesn't happen that way. Maybe if you're a multi-million-dollar account holder and you come in with your bag of $1 million, they're going to look at you with eyes with dollar signs, and they're going to be like, I can take your money and grow it for you. But if you're small and you're new and you walk in with $3,000 to begin investing, you have to know what your plan is. They're not going to tell you. They might. And if you don't have a plan, if you don't know what you're going to do, they're going to guide you to what's going to benefit them, which is they're going to put it into a fund where they get a commission. That's essentially what's going to happen when you're a small investor. So it kind of comes back to this is a path that if you're nervous about dabbling and stepping onto, I encourage you to do it. You don't need to be a brain surgeon to do this. You just need to have emotional confidence to drive your own car. You need some patience, and you need to show up and be willing to read about it, be willing to step into the education of yourself. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you can manage your own money and you can step into your own power financially and become an educated person, where you can say, I'm going to invest, I'm going to put some money into this business because I like what this business is doing in the world. I like who they are, and I think there's potential here for growth. Right? That's the essence of investing, right? Is aligning yourself. It's leveraging the wisdom and intelligence of others to allow your money to grow. And it's making the right decision around that. And it's being patient with the ups and downs of the market and the ups and downs of that particular company if they're, if they're going through some growing pains. So kind of back to Peter Lynch and the 8th grade teacher and her students who beat the S&P. One of the things he talks about in that book, which I really loved, not just the teacher and her like very simple, basic ways of showing the children how to look at the market. Peter Lynch said, like kids actually, like they're out in the world, and some of the best stock advice he ever got, he said, was from his teenagers. Because why? Like they're out at the mall, they're out in the world, they know what's popular, they know what the other kids are talking about. So some of the retail stocks that he turned into what they call 10 baggers, which like took your principal and just times it by 10 and just allowed it to grow significantly, came from concepts of his teenagers. What were his teenagers interested in? Where are trends moving? So that is something that if you start to it's like taking a step back and looking at your world from a wider perspective. What is our world doing? Where are we headed as a world, as a global entity, as or even within the United States? What industries are having growth and what industries are falling back? And the more you kind of like pick up the Wall Street Journal, maybe even spend, read that once a week, but allow yourself to become exposed to the language, to the businesses and the players, the ones that are actually showing growth. And then the other piece of this is to not be afraid to step in and take action, and to not be afraid to step in with money that may or may not grow, or that you can have possible losses on. I've absolutely had losses. But in the 10 years that I've been investing, I've had more gains than I've ever had losses. And that if I had only kept my money in a bank account, or have only done like these wimpy CDs, which are completely pathetic, it's like such a joke, that I would never have been able to with my husband buy the house that we bought. It was because of the stock market and because of our stock gains that we actually had savings and holdings that enough to allow us to buy our home. We would never have been able to go through periods actually with my husband and I of literally not working and having severe unemployment issues in our life, that what kept us alive was that we had stock holdings that were doing well. And, that on top of that, we lived below our means and we were conservative about how we lived. But our stock portfolio is something that I wake up and I felt so grateful for. We moved through the crash of 2007, 2008. I had holdings in there that definitely lost a huge chunk, like everybody. But did that end things for me? No. As the market bottomed out, I jumped back in and gained back everything that I lost and then some. And then I just kept going more into profit. So it is a sea to ride. It is an ocean. You're going to ride waves. And it's getting used to what that feels like, and being able to sit in the emotional seat of the market is a big piece of that. And that's something that, this is an advanced reader, but it's Benjamin Graham was William Buffett's teacher for the market, and he talks about that. I mean, I've not finished that book. It's a giant book. It's very, very intense reading, very heady, very left brain. But the little parts of that book that I looked at, one of the things he really talks about is being able to hold your emotions in the face of the market, and being able to know why the market is moving the way it is. So those are some things that I encourage you to step in. And it's not just about stepping in and throwing the responsibility to someone else. It's sort of the point of today's video, but it's being willing to step in, take action upon what you want to create and do. Be okay with things failing and falling apart a little bit, and let that be a learning ground for you. And be able to drive your own car. Take responsibility for your financial future, because if you don't, nobody else will. Not even your mother. Your mother won't even do that, because she's got to work on her own financial future. So, and she may not know as much as you do. So you might even be able to help your mother out. Go figure. So, all right. That is all for today. Please, if you have questions about this, thoughts or comments, you can feel free to contact me. If you want to know the online, the very simple, basic online trading account that I use, I can contact me and I'll share that with you. And yeah. And if you have, and this is something I'm really, really passionate about, and I'm really passionate about helping others get started and to have confidence to step into it. So if this is something that you seriously want to do, you can contact me and I will help you further on this. All right, have an awesome day. Please leave thoughts and comments below. And again, if you want to have more access to my videos and my 30-day Millionaire Mindset series, please join my email subscriber list. There's a link below this video, and I look forward to working with you in the future, in the near future. Have an awesome day. Bye.